because lay people can buy these cameras themselves.
Right.
And there's probably the temptation to set it up themselves.
Oh, sure.
Are
It's a
they
very
gonna
simple thing to
likely
do.
be either sloppy or ill-informed in a way that's going to open them up?
Yes, most definitely. Most everybody that puts in a new router at their home or deals with Cox or Comcast or anybody else's system never changes the password. 90% of the time we'll walk into a business even and they haven't changed the password. We can log into that router and get in and check the configurations. Okay, that's terrible. You need to change that username and password at the very minimum. And if you want to go further than that, getting somebody that's a security expert to actually go through those settings and say, hey, these are the things you want to have on and you want to have off in a router is a very good approach to take. Probably the second biggest issue is there is no software on that machine protecting it. So they don't have an antivirus or an anti-malware software on there, or they have an antivirus, but they don't have anti-malware. And again, the difference there is an anti-malware is a malware is an application that's installed on that system. So
now, does the anti-malware typically just work in the background, or do you have to tell it to do a scan?
It can be either way, depending on the software, and usually what we like to do is both. So if you set it up so that it automatically runs in the background, just like your antivirus software, but you do want to schedule it to run a full scan every week, some time frame which you're comfortable with, and scan that system and make sure that it's still clean.
Now, even if you've changed your passwords, are there things people might do that are still going to expose their cameras?
Yes, because what happens is you go to these websites these days and there's clickware, there's clickbait, there's all kinds of different things that you can get into on websites where if you click on a link, it actually runs the malware for you. Okay, and not all malware protection software is going to block that. Okay, so you can still get to sites where they've, and we call them nefarious sites because obviously they're sites you don't generally frequent, and they get to these sites and they'll click on a link and you're infected. You've got something and you don't normally know it. A lot of these things sit in the background, especially with a camera type thing. What it's trying to do is activate your camera. So it'll actually activate the camera and take pictures or take video or whatever else when you click on that link.
I've heard in some cases that in the ads that you don't necessarily have to go to a shady site to get infected.
Correct. Yep. That happens a lot on sites that's why we like to use Google a lot, because Google doesn't have ads all over its homepage. Okay, whereas other sites they use ads all over the place. If you're going to go to a site that has ads, you want to make sure that you're using a browser that's up to date, because there are browser updates that need to take place that'll stop and block those kind of things. We also tend to use a DNS filter. Okay, a DNS filter is a software that runs your connection through their link and makes sure that everything's clean on that site. Okay, so and Cisco's got one called Umbrella that we use, but.
Are these things an average person can
Cisco Umbrella,
and
sure.
work with?
Yep. You turn on Cisco Umbrella and it activates. You simply change your DNS on that router device. You have to punch in a number.
We should explain what a DNS is, because we could easily zoom over people's heads.
Sure. It's a domain naming system, which is basically the way your computer talks to the internet. Okay, you're filtering that. So in other words, you're sending information from your computer out to the internet when you click on a link. It filters it through its DNS servers, makes sure that everything is clean, and then sends it back if it is. Okay, so that it filters everything that happens between your computer and the internet.
I've seen one piece of advice I've seen is to run all your stuff through a virtual personal network. Is that a good idea?
You can, although that gets a lot more complicated. Then, I mean, if we're dealing with home users, that's going to be. There are virtual VPN clients that you can purchase online and do that, especially if you're doing a lot of going to coffee shops, things like that with your laptop. That's a great way to go, but they do take some configuration and setup. But it is a good alternative, obviously, because then you're creating a tunnel between your system and that virtual private network, so nothing can get in between. That doesn't mean that you're not going to click on a bad link when you do that, okay, and you can still get infected on that system. But it blocks anybody that's in that vicinity or that can see your connection from interfering.
And this would all work with a camera like this that is reaching your router via Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So because at one point or another, your router is your window to the outside world, and that's where you need the toughest safeguards.
Correct. Yep. And well, that, and once you're into the network, your computer has a firewall as well. Okay, a lot of people turn those off. Don't do that. Leave it on. It does help. Make sure that your computer's up to date, because there's all the patching, and Microsoft puts out all of their stuff every Tuesday, okay, with all their patches and fixes and everything else. Make sure that you've got at least the security ones going on, because those ones are the ones that protect you against that kind of issue.
Now, there's certain myths people need to get over, because I know people go like, "Oh, I've got a Mac. These things don't happen to Macs." I've got an old computer. I moved over to Linux, and you sometimes hear, "Well, oh, don't worry about Linux," and I keep wondering about that.
Well, you can hack anything. It's a matter of whether or not they want to hack those things. Usually, when they're developing malware software that they want to infect computers with, they do it for the PCs, because there's a lot more PCs out there. Okay, doesn't mean that there isn't stuff for Mac. Doesn't mean there's not stuff for Linux that'll do the exact same thing. It's just much more limited. But if anybody wants to hack your system, and they're looking at you and they say, "I want to get into your system," and they know what they're doing, there's a high likelihood that they're going to get in no matter what it is.
So you've got to hope that you're not a specific target.
Correct.
And then you're taking steps to be somebody, they don't just vacuum up at random.
Well, and also you want to make sure that you take these precautionary steps, because the more of these steps that you take, the more the layers that they have to go through to get to you, the less likely they're going to want to put in the effort to do it.
So you got to be a useful, interesting target for them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like look at Equifax, a very interesting target. Yeah. So something like Equifax, yeah, they're going to work at it pretty darn hard. Whereas things like, somebody's home computer and a camera, unless they specifically want to go after you for some reason, the likelihood of them actually trying to get through all of these layers of security to get to you is pretty unlikely.
So probably if you just take moderate, reasonable precautions in the reach of a layman, you're probably going to be all right.
Right. Yep. Change your password, update your BIOS. And the BIOS updates happen on these routers probably every 6 months or so. You want to make sure you've got them updated, because what happens is the router companies come out with a fix, a patch for their stuff, just like Microsoft does for Windows. You have to patch those as well. So you want to make sure you're running those updates. You want to make sure that you're doing all that. You want to make sure that you've got your firewall on your computer. You want to make sure that you've got your system up to date. All the patches are done there.
For a lot of these routers, especially like the combo boxes like the cable companies put out, if you just power up, power down, don't they tend to update periodically?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
A lot of times you have to actually, and usually they will send you a notification saying they've got updates for those routers, and that you have to run a certain file to get that update completed.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
Anything else I want to add? Nothing that I can think of.
It's way down.
Yeah. There's a lot of information there. Again, the biggest thing that you want to do is layer yourself. As many layers as you can put between yourself and the outside hackers and world that exists out there, the better off you are.
Well, it sounds like you got to strike a balance that you don't make it too difficult for you to use.
Right. And most of these things won't make it difficult for you to use. It's a matter of you patched or you fixed or you ran an update on the system. Those are real simple things to do. Making sure that your antivirus and anti-malware software is up to date is not a hard thing. It pops up on your screen and says it needs an update. So they're not difficult, and they don't necessarily make it harder for you to get out or in on your system. It's just repetitive things that you have to do.
Should you be more concerned if you're using older hardware, older OSs?
Absolutely, yeah. The older the OS, if you're running XP, there is no more updates for XP. So the holes that exist in XP exist in XP. They're not going to be fixed. If you're running Windows 7, you don't have that worry for a few years yet, because they're still supporting. They're still putting out those patches and fixes. The newer the operating system, though, the better off the patching is on them, because they're paying more attention to them.
That's why I switched my old one to Linux.
Right. And Linux is not an easy thing to hack. And again, that's another layer, because not only would they have to go through your firewall and your antivirus software and everything else. But then you got to figure out how they're going to get into a Linux box.